Hello, friend. I hope that you will stay with me through this whole program. I'm going to give you first a spiritual reason why blindness is so prevalent when it comes to the mission of Islam. And then I'm going to give you a more practical reason why. Let's start with the spiritual. During the life of Christ, who were the most fierce enemies of Jesus? The Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. In fact, I invite you to look at the Gospel of St. Mark, chapter 12. All right? And in chapter 12, you see the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the Herodians working together to try and trip up Jesus so that he could be arrested and tried by Roman authorities. Now, there's something really significant here, and I want you to grasp this. The Pharisees hated the Sadducees and the Herodians. The Pharisees were devout Jews, students of the Scriptures, who believed in the resurrection. They believed in spirits. The Sadducees were Jews who denied the resurrection. And if you remember when Paul was on trial, he split the room between the Pharisees and the Sadducees because the Pharisees said, well, if he's seen a spirit, then, something that says there's life after death, then let's hear him. And the Sadducees, who denied the resurrection, said no. So Paul, in a moment of genius, surely Holy Spirit inspired, split the room between the Pharisees and the Sadducees because there was such enmity and hatred between them. The Pharisees and the Sadducees both despised the Herodians because they were basically Jews or partial Jews who had betrayed their country. The Herodians were despised by both the Pharisees and the Sadducees. The Herodians were Jews or partial Jews that had sworn their allegiance to Herod. So they were a political party who was committed to the subjugation of the Jewish people to Roman authority. You have to remember that many of the Jews hated Herod, all right? And the zealots, of whom Simon was one, wanted the violent overthrow of Roman rule in Jerusalem, in all of Israel. So these three factions of Jews, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians, hated each other. But they had an overarching hatred that even surpassed their hatred of each other. And that was the hatred of Jesus. They hated him. And their hatred of him united them in their ongoing efforts, in their ongoing conspiracy to try and bring Christ to his death. Fast forward with me to make the point. When Paul was on his way, Saul, as he was known at the time, was on his way to Damascus to arrest and incarcerate and bring back to Jerusalem certain Christians to be tried and perhaps executed, as he had been a part of the execution of Stephen, the first martyr. And the Lord appeared to him. What did the Lord say to him? He said, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? That's what Jesus said. Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And Saul said, who are you? And he said, I am Jesus. Now, Jesus was in heaven, right? So that means that Christ's words, what you do to the least of these, my brethren, you do to me. Well, it means that Jesus takes those words quite seriously. So now that Jesus is seated at the right hand of God the Father, if evil men and women, if the Sadducees, the Pharisees, and the Herodians of today want to persecute Christ, want to bring harm to Christ, how do they do it? They go after Christians. They go after and attack and persecute the church. And so as you watch the empty-headed, foolish statements of political leaders saying that Islam is a peaceful religion, as you see the New York Times refuse to print the cartoons and try and create this narrative that somebody who stands against Islam is an Islamophobe and they're like the Nazis who were against the Jews, creating these bizarre scenarios. And you're looking, how could they be so stupid? How could they be so blind? There's a spiritual dynamic at work here. It is the dynamic that was at work with the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the Herodians. Secretly in their heart, the media elite might really dislike Islam and certain Islamic leaders, but they hate Jesus more. They hate the church more, because if you're going to go after Christ, you've got to go after the church. And if you look in Muslim lands right now, from Saudi Arabia to Pakistan to Afghanistan to Syria to Iraq at the hands of ISIS, who's being tormented the most? It's Christians. It's Christians. And so you see the modern day Herodians, Pharisees, and Sadducees who despise each other. Political leaders who hate the press because the press give them a hard time. The press who despise secretly certain elements of Islam, and Muslims who hate the press and Western religious leaders. But somehow they all find themselves in agreement that they hate Jesus and they hate his church. And they would rather side with the Muslims, these political fools, and these media, I'm trying to be careful with my adjectives, you fill in the blank, these media blanks. They despise the church, the true church, the Christian community, Jesus Christ, the Son of God, God the Son. They despise him and his people so much that they would rather give a pass to Islam than to report the truth about Islam, and thereby imply, well, Christianity might be right.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah.
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
We have put together what we call an online university for you. Now that's a highfalutin way of saying that we have a pretty significant library of material, books, tapes, videos, that are there for you for free. Why are we doing this? Because America is desperate for new leaders, and because this material could help you to become the leader that you and God want you to be. Check it out and enjoy it.